Hi everyone, this is Dr. Chhoda with Ignition Time and welcome to our channel. In this video, I'm going to give you a detailed breakdown of a bipartisan stimulus bill. It's essentially a framework actually that's been introduced by the Problem Solvers Caucus. And I'll tell you whether this has any likelihood of gaining traction. Now, this bill is worth mentioning because there are several things in the bill that are actually good, that actually seek compromise, that seek common ground between the two parties. What I also find really interesting about this bill is this bill was introduced by Representatives Tom Reed, who's a Republican from New York, and Josh Gottheimer, who's a Democrat from New Jersey. Now, keep in mind, Tom Reed is 48 years old and Josh Gottheimer is 45 years old. So these are relatively younger lawmakers relative to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, relative to everybody else who's been a lawmaker for many decades. So I did think that was interesting, a sort of a newer, fresher perspective that is being introduced here. In this video, I'll give you a detailed outline of this bill that has been proposed. Again, it's a framework by the Problem Solvers Caucus, and I will tell you whether this has any likelihood of going forward. So as you can see, here's an article on your screen, and this article says that bipartisan lawmakers offer a pandemic relief solution in order to break the logjam. This is a $1.5 trillion package, which is essentially urging the negotiators, which is House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer on one side, and it is U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and the White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows representing the White House, representing the administration on the other side. So essentially, the idea is to get these individuals back to the table. In fact, I think it's better that you hear from Josh Gottheimer right now. He was interviewed on CNBC just a couple of hours ago this morning, and what he said was that this is a framework to get the negotiators back to the table. What he said was that the Problem Solvers Caucus, which consists of lawmakers from both sides, that is worth mentioning, is trying to find some areas of common ground between the two parties. And what he said was this is a framework to get the negotiators back to the table. We have indeed addressed the major stumbling blocks. Now, I'll be honest with my viewers and subscribers. I like what I hear. This is a good thing. What you're about to hear is a good thing. But there's one thing I've learned in business and in life, and there's one thing that exists in politics. Just because something makes sense and just because it's good doesn't mean it's going to happen. So I do want us to have our expectations in check, but I think it's important to hear what's going on. And I will also tell you, because some news has come to light since this CNBC interview, because there was a caucus call by the Democrats after the CNBC interview in which House Speaker Nancy Pelosi weighed in. And I will give you an update about that as well. But first, let's hear the good intentions of the Problem Solvers Caucus. And let's roll the tape and listen to what Josh Gottheimer had to say. Let's watch this.
Very well intentioned, and I know everybody's trying to come to some kind of agreement, but it feels like everybody is still so far apart, no?
Well, we found that there's 25 Democrats and 25 Republicans, and frankly, far more when we talk to our colleagues who really want to get something done. We were able to actually put out a plan. We got together, and if you spend time together, we found a way on the major obstacles that we could agree. And we all think that continue to face a serious economic and health crisis. Obviously, flu season's coming up. We can't afford to do nothing until the next inauguration. So we figured out a way, and this is just a framework to hopefully get the negotiators back to the table and facing the toughest of differences and a place where we can agree.
Congressman, though, let's talk about what's in that plan that you guys have agreed on thus far, but also let's talk about the differences that are out there, because I think right now the betting line is that nothing, unfortunately, is going to happen between now and Election Day.
Sure. So if you look at the major areas that are stumbling blocks, that had been stumbling blocks and from the negotiators, one, we were able to agree on unemployment insurance up to 100% at up to $600, 100% of wages. That's over 13 weeks. And with a transition period to help states get that set up. We've talked about another stimulus check to families of $1,200 plus $500 per dependent child. A big area that's been tough has been state and local resources for state and local governments, which are critical right now given the revenue holes and the costs they face. So we've talked about an additional $500 billion over the next year. That's in addition to $130 billion that's already in place. So that we really believe would help our state and local governments. We've got child resources for testing, which obviously is critical, for child care, for another round of PPP for small businesses, a second round for small businesses, because so many small businesses continue to hurt. In New Jersey, where I live, 22% of independent restaurants are out of business already. So we need to help our small businesses through this. So we really, and that there's a ton of other areas where we've addressed. We feel like we've taken on the toughest ones and found bipartisan support, which is the key, and I think shown a pathway forward for the negotiators to find agreement. And we're just asking folks to get back to the table, which is so important given what we're facing.
Now, in the second segment of the interview, Gottheimer was asked, what is the holdup? Why is there a holdup? Why is it that we can't gain some traction? And what he said was the holdup is the overall price tag and the fact that leadership wants to focus on long-term planning, a couple of years out, 2 years, 3 years out, whereas our objective, meaning the Problem Solver Caucus's objective, is to try and focus on the immediate needs, just a few months into the future, just slightly past the election. I thought that was a very interesting thing to say because so far, the public perception has been, hey, it's about the state aid, it's about a comprehensive bill versus a piecemeal approach. But now what Gottheimer said was that, hey, our leadership is focusing on the long term, 2 years, 3 years out, but we are focused on getting through the immediate crisis, getting through the next few months. Let's roll the tape and see what Gottheimer had to say.
I think the holdup, frankly, is about, we get into these fights about the overall price tag that we should begin with, instead of talking about programs one by one and saying, what do we need to take on? What do we need to handle here? And the way we looked at it was a shorter time frame to get us through the inauguration, the next inauguration, whoever is president, and get us through that period of time instead of fighting about 2 years from now. And that's really been the holdup. Everyone keeps fighting over long term. And so, yes, then you get into conversations about piecemeal or not piecemeal, instead of saying, what are the key things we've got to tackle between now and March? What do we got to get done, and just get them done?
So guys, let's address the big question. Does this have a chance of being accepted by a significant number of Democrats? Does it have a chance of gaining bipartisan support and going forward? I'll answer that question. And also we'll take a closer look at the components of this bipartisan $1.5 trillion stimulus bill. It does have a lot of good things, and it does address the needs of both sides, with both sides having to compromise a little bit, which is what a negotiation is all about. This is reporting from Jake Sherman over at Political. The House Problem Solvers Caucus said that their stimulus plan was aimed at bringing the two sides to the table again. And you heard that from Gottheimer in the interview. Early indications from the two sides suggest that they are unimpressed, and this plan does nothing at all to restart talks. In fact, you'll see another tweet on your screen from Jake Sherman again. This raised a lot of eyebrows on the Democratic caucus call this morning. This just happened as Josh Gottheimer attempted to rally Democrats around the Problem Solvers bill. And there has now been reporting from multiple sources on the call, and you'll see this thread on your screen from Heather Cagle, who's also with Politico. And Heather said that despite a bipartisan effort from the Problem Solvers Caucus this morning to push the stimulus relief talks forward, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is standing firm on the caucus call. And she said, and I quote, "A skinny deal is not a deal, it is a Republican bill." Now, as you can see in the thread, when we go down the thread, the Twitter thread with Heather Cagle, you'll see that many important Democrats were actually on the call. And one of the important Democrats, House Ways and Means Chair Richard Neal, by the way, he's 71 years old. He said, for us not to cave is really important. So you're starting to see a trend of more seasoned politicians, if you will, politicians who've been in the game, lawmakers who've been in the game for a long time, saying, hey, we got to stand firm. We can't cave. And House Speaker Nancy Pelosi did say recently that the last place you want to get weak-kneed is at the end of a negotiation. So you can be sure that the House Speaker is very unlikely to budge, and she does have other Democrats who are on her side. And most of the chairs, as you can see from this thread, most of the chairs are backing up Speaker Pelosi. But there was one individual, Peter DeFazio, going rogue, advocating for a new package. He said, we can't leave town without a package, he said on the call, as per the Democrats. So there is some friction, there is some division inside the Democratic caucus, but it's very clear that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is standing firm, and they are not taking a serious interest. Many Democrats are not taking a serious interest in what the Problem Solvers Caucus has to say, despite the fact that there are some Democrats who are on their side. In other words, in short, this is not gaining the level of traction that is needed for it to become serious and for it to go forward from the House to the Senate. So let's take a look at what this bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus bill does indeed include. This $1.5 trillion bill. On your screen, you'll see a tweet from Erica Werner with the Washington Post, and she wrote, the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus bill is releasing a $1.5 trillion proposal this morning. By the way, they're about to do a press conference later this afternoon talking about their bill, but you already have all the information because I'm giving you all the information even before their press conference. And the idea is to present it as a framework for restarting stimulus negotiations. Keep in mind that this is intended to get House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and U.S. Treasury Secretary and Mark Meadows, White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, back to the table. This does include new $1,200 stimulus checks for individuals. It includes SNAP Plus Up and rental assistance, $500 billion for cities and states. So the UI piece, the unemployment benefits extension piece, because keep in mind, everyone's struggling. Everyone needs quick cash now. Everyone needs money right now. And this is what they're trying to address. The UI piece would extend benefits at $600 a week up to but not exceeding 100% of an individual's previous wages. So it essentially plugs the gap, if you will, of individuals getting paid more than what they made had they been working, which was a problem with the original $600 a week booster. And this would happen through January. States would have an 8-week transition period to get this in place, during which time people would get a booster of $450 a week on top of their state UI. This proposal does include automatic boosters or reducers based on hospitalization metrics and vaccine progress, and the overall cost would could increase by $400 billion by extending unemployment insurance and more stimulus checks, or it could decrease by $200 billion by reducing the Paycheck Protection Program, state and local aid, and rental assistance. So I believe that this is definitely a step in the right direction. But like I mentioned at the start of the video, just because something makes sense doesn't mean it'll get done because of the climate that we are in. And the caucus includes 25 Democrats and 25 Republicans, and it does require 75% of its members to endorse. And it's very unclear if it will go anywhere at all. Based on current indications, it's not going to go anywhere. But I did think the components of the stimulus bill were worth mentioning. Leadership in both parties are aware of this. The White House is also aware of it. U.S. Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin actually mentioned it yesterday in an interview with CNBC. And so here's a tweet on your screen from Jake Sherman. Jake Sherman specifically answers, what problems does this solve? It actually solves many problems. Number one, Senate Republicans have rejected checks to individuals. Remember, the skinny bill did not include the $1,200 stimulus check. So this does include the $1,200 stimulus check. So that's one problem solved. The second problem solved is the White House has actually rejected aid for states and cities and states beyond, I believe, $150 or $200 billion. And the Democrats wanted $900 billion. This makes them meet right in the middle at $500 billion, which is a good thing. And number three, extending unemployment insurance at a level that the Republicans have originally rejected. This could be a hard thing for the Republicans to get behind, even if the Democrats get behind it, because the Republicans did not want to provide more unemployment insurance, more unemployment benefit extension. And that is a fact. In fact, there was a lot of disagreement in their own party about that. So on your screen, you see the entire outline of the $1.5 trillion stimulus bill, this bipartisan stimulus bill that's been proposed by the Problem Solvers Caucus. It does have a lot of encouraging things. So the first page is the overview page. You'll see that they have money for testing and healthcare. That's $100 billion, which includes $25 billion for testing and contact tracing, $30 billion for healthcare provider support, including but not limited to telehealth, $45 billion forgiveness of Medicare loans to providers because, they wanted to help healthcare providers to help those in need. So that's what's been going on. Now, this is the important part that is relevant to all my viewers and subscribers. Support for individuals and families, $316 billion. So $1,200 direct stimulus checks with $500 per child, plus money for dependent adults. So that is very significant. $280 billion set aside for that. Rental assistance, which is very important for the most needy, and other rent stabilization programs, and the extension of the eviction moratorium through January 2021. This would help millions of our fellow Americans. Student loan forbearance through the end of the year. Also, there would be unemployment insurance program assistance. So there'll be $120 billion set aside for the unemployment insurance program, which would include, like I mentioned earlier, $450 a week for an 8-week period, followed by up to $600 per week and up to but not exceeding 100% of the prior wage. And this would be for 13 weeks from mid-October 2020 all the way through January 2021. So this actually is a good thing. Also, as you can see on your screen, aid for small business and nonprofits, $290 billion, $240 billion for a second round of the Paycheck Protection Program, and $50 billion for targeted employee retention tax credit to facilitate businesses to retain their employees and not let individuals go, to fix the loopholes in the Main Street lending program. Aids for schools and childcare, $145 billion, $15 billion for childcare providers, flexible and immediate, $100 billion for K through 12 schools for virtual, hybrid and in-person training, $30 billion for higher education institutions. All of this is very encouraging. And if it creates a framework for individuals to get back to the table and start talking, then I think that the Problem Solvers Caucus would have done their jobs. But at this moment, I want to be clear, it doesn't seem like this is gaining any traction. There's also aid for state and local governments, $500 billion, which has been a big sticking point. Remember, the Democrats wanted close to $1 trillion, approximately $900 billion. The administration was willing to provide right around $150 billion. This is meeting right in the middle at $500 billion, which is good. And this suggested that allow $130 billion remaining from the CARES Act for flexible use on documented past state and local pandemic expenses, on documented expenses. Remember, this has been one of the key areas of contention between the administration and the Democrats. The administration was like, hey, the Democrats just want the money and they're not telling us how they want to use it. And so this would actually address a significant number of those problems. In fact, it specifically talks about $130 billion in new money for documented future state and local expenses. So the proposal here is that as long as those expenses are documented, those future expenses related to the pandemic are documented, then that assistance would come through this bill. So a lot of interesting things, a lot of steps in the right direction. This is a documented framework. And the more traction, the more publicity this gets, the more Democrats jump on board, the more pressure there will be on both sides to make something happen. So let's hope that this goes forward and this doesn't fizzle out. If you want to play a role, write a letter to your local senator or lawmaker. Watch this video. I have done another video where I've provided my viewers and subscribers with an actual framework of a letter. Write a letter to local lawmakers and subscribers and tell them that you're behind the Problem Solvers bill. Because if there ever was a time when we needed to get together, it is now. We need to be able to support something like this, because this is the definition of bipartisan. So I do appreciate the work that they're doing, but from a practical standpoint, it's not going to gain traction unless we as constituents pressure our lawmakers to support this bill, and then that goes up the food chain, specifically all the way to the administration and all the way to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. And there would also be aid for election day, $400 million in aid for election day, for incremental election costs. There would also be assistance for broadband, agriculture, the United States Postal Service and Census, $52 billion, $12 billion for hotspots and underserved communities, which is good, $25 billion for agriculture and aquaculture producers and processors and other things. So you can see that, they're trying to get in several things that were that essentially are a priority for both sides. Maybe one side ends up getting a little bit more than the other, but so what? It's just time to get it done, because this has been dragging so long. There will also be worker and liability protection, which is exactly what the Republicans wanted. So hopefully the Republicans should be happy with enhanced protections for entities which follow enhanced OSHA guidelines, robust enforcement of worker safety, which is important. And there would be automatic boosters and reducers. So there would be essentially an increase and a decrease in aid depending on how that particular state was doing. This way, if a state was doing well, they would get less aid. If a state was not doing so well, they would get another aid. And this would also apply to unemployment benefits extension and automatic 3-month unemployment benefit extension enhancement in February 2021, if warranted based on metrics, and an automatic stimulus checks in March 2021, if warranted based on metrics. So what that would mean is, let's say your state was still struggling with the pandemic, businesses had still not reopened. God forbid, this problem is much worse in your state. By the way, in the next few months, some states will end up doing better than others. It's just the nature of our recovery. But what this plan is suggesting is that based on metrics, if a state is not doing well, the unemployment benefit extension would continue. If a state was not doing well, then more stimulus checks would happen in March 2021. So again, this is a step in the right direction, proposed by two relatively young lawmakers, 45 and 48, being relatively young. I'm 42 years old. I feel like a really old man sometimes covering this news. Some of my hair has actually turned white. I don't know if you guys can see it. Let me know if you should color my hair or if you like the silver fox look. I'm laughing because, guys, this is a situation in which we have, some lawmakers presenting some calm, presenting some rationale, presenting some common ground. But the leadership is standing firm. The leadership doesn't want to budge. The leadership doesn't want to, I quote, be weak-kneed. This is the Democrat side. And on the Republican side, they don't want to budge. They don't want to provide more aid to some of the demands of the Democrats, which the Democrats would think is legitimate. For me, it's not about the red or the blue. It's about the red, white, and blue. I'm not Democrat. I'm not Republican. I'm American. So for me, I look at both sides and see, hey guys, just meet in the middle. And this Problem Solvers Caucus bill is a good thing. But let's be pragmatic here. Let's be practical. Let's be honest. Let's just call it what it is. It is an attempt to build a consensus, a framework to get the two sides. But at this moment in time, it does not look like it's going to gain any traction based on what I reported to you at the start of the video. And this is surprising, right? When you saw the start of the video, you're like, it's going to be a waste of time. But when you actually get into the specifics of the bill, you're like, whoa, this is good. Why aren't both sides considering it? And why aren't both sides saying, hey, let's create, let's make this the framework? And so finally, let's take a look at the cost of this. You'll see the screen that represents the cost of the $1.5 trillion bill. So, there's new money. There's potential 2021 boosters based on the automatic enhancement or the reduction based on how that state is doing. And there's $130 billion of previously appropriated CARES Act money that should be put to use as per this particular proposal. And there are potential 2021 reducers. In other words, if a state is doing well, then that $200 billion in red that you see at the bottom will be saved. So let me know in the comment section below what you think of this $1.5 trillion stimulus proposal. I believe my analysis has been one of the most comprehensive on the internet. I hope you appreciate our effort. Once again, please comment below. Let us know what you think. Please also share this video with friends and family. If you want to help, try and understand what the Problem Solvers Caucus is offering. That's number one, which I think this video addresses that for you. Maybe watch this video again if you want to really understand what it is that they're offering. Check out the links in the description section below, because we'll provide you with all the links relevant to this video so you can do further research. So number one, try and understand exactly what is being offered. Number two, please share the video with friends and family members. And then number three, ask them to contact their local lawmakers and say, hey, you know what, the Problem Solvers Caucus $1.5 trillion stimulus proposal makes sense. Let's rally behind it and let's get it done for the American people. Once again, please comment below. Please share the video. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. My name is Dr. Nitin Chhoda with Ignition Time. If you don't know anything about me, check out my introductory video. I have the fortune, the honor, the privilege of living the American dream. I am a beneficiary of American exceptionalism, and I want to help you live your American dream. Please click like, please subscribe, please enable notifications so you get instant updates from our channel going forward. Sometimes YouTube does not send out notifications, so please make sure to bookmark youtube.com/ignition time. Once again, that's youtube.com/ignition time, so that you can visit our channel at your convenience and never miss a single video. Follow us on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is ignition_time. That's ignition_time. And we release exclusive content specifically for our Instagram followers. You can also follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is also ignition_time. So follow us on Twitter, because you can get breaking news and alerts from us on Twitter. Now, we release videos at 2 p.m. East Coast time most days of the week. So make sure you please click like, you subscribe, you enable notifications. Speaking of notifications, get your cell phone out, send a text message with the word ignition or with the word time to 70,000. That's 70000. And you can get added to our SMS list. You can also get added to our email list if you want. Go to ignitiontime.com/alerts. That's ignitiontime.com/alerts. And then you can get added to our email list. You can opt out of our email list or our SMS list at any time that you want. Thank you so much for watching. Again, please click like, please subscribe, please enable notifications, because that is your vote of confidence in me, in my team, and all the hard work that we do to put together this exclusive content specifically for our viewers and subscribers. So if you do that, it helps out the YouTube algorithm, it helps us, and it is your vote of confidence in us. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon. Bye.